Justin Fields is really interesting, and we've got to start the show with him. He is an incredible player. The stats off the charts, the measurables off the charts, the pedigree off the charts. Now, this isn't so much about whether or not, the Niners will take him third or a team prefers Mac Jones or Trey Lance over Justin Fields. That's part of it. But for the purpose of today's discussion, not a hatchet job because, as we learned, he's battling epilepsy, but he's the one that revealed it to the teams, all right? It's not like it suddenly just emerged out of nowhere. He was forthright with the teams, and rightfully so. He's on medication. By the way, Alan Faneca, a Hall of Famer, not a quarterback, but a Hall of Famer, also battled that throughout his career. Take the medication. Generally, you're okay. You could actually be eradicated over time. There's a thought that it's going to leave his body, for lack of a better medical description. Number one, should a team be alarmed by this, Teague? Let's start with that. Should a team be alarmed enough if you like him slightly better than one of the other quarterbacks? Is this enough to scare you off and take somebody else?
To me, it's not, BT, because epilepsy is such a largely misunderstood condition. I'll give you an example. Technically, me and my twin, Rondé, could have been epileptics because we had so many seizures when we were kids. But the reason they knew why we were having seizures, whenever I would spike a fever, they were febrile seizures, I'd spike a fever and then I'd go into a seizure. But as I got older, my body learned how to not spike so quickly, and so the seizures went away. I grew out of them, as they said.
At what age? By about, and Rondé the same age too?
6 or 7 or something like that.
Gotcha.
Interestingly, AJ, my oldest son, had the same situation, and he had a bunch of seizures. In fact, we had a seizure doctor, one of the best on the East Coast, Dr. Orrin Davinsky, advised us on these things, and he said, look, if you grew out of them, meaning me and Rondé, if you all grew out of them, then likely AJ will grow out of them as well. It was the same presentation. Spike a fever because you get a cold or whatever virus, all of a sudden your body just ceases to release some of that tension. And it was scary, but it wasn't anything that we ever thought was threatening. If he's been dealing with this his whole life, his whole high school football career, college football career, and this is the first we've heard of it, then that means that it's manageable. And if I'm an NFL team, it's another question that I need to ask, and maybe a couple of, I don't know, some more medical advice I need to procure, but it's nothing that's scaring me away because it hasn't affected him one bit throughout his high school and college career to date.
I agree. And he's been on the national radar for a couple of years. 34 games in college, couple of Georgia, obviously, last couple of years at Ohio State. I mean, his frame, 6'3", 240. We talked about the 40 time. During the non-pandemic, which was the best since RG3 years ago, by the way, for a quarterback. But the 2019 non-pandemic season, 41 touchdowns, 3 picks. Last year, truncated season, 22 touchdowns, 6 picks, 15 rushing touchdowns the last few years. The evidence is there. Now, if you prefer Trey Lance, that's fine. If you prefer Mac Jones, who I personally do not, and I've been very vocal about that, there's no way I would take Mac Jones over Justin Fields under any circumstance. But the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I get that. It's subjective, the analysis. I'm not here to tell anybody that they're wrong because I can't prove that yet. The data over the next couple of years will either reinforce my position or reinforce somebody else's here. What I do find interesting, of all the quarterbacks, again, this is not a hatchet job because he was forthright with teams and he told them, all right? But how did it go from there to here? And, we haven't heard a peep about Trevor Lawrence, and rightfully so. He seems to be basically an impeccable prospect.
Yep.
The only thing we heard about Zach Wilson was, a little flamboyant or a little entitled. That was shot down immediately. That hatchet job piece from about a month or so ago. Everything about Trey Lance is favorable except his experience. Mac Jones, we laugh at his body, doesn't pop off the camera in terms of being fit, but his collegiate career, borderline impeccable. And obviously Justin Fields. Of all the quarterbacks, I feel like Justin is the one. Don't forget, 3 weeks ago it was refuted, but still it followed the young man around. It's a little late to the building. It's a little early to leave. I mean, Why is this happening to Justin Fields?
I don't know, BT, and I wish I had an easy answer for you. Some people would point to its race, but I don't think it's that. Maybe it's because he had a non-traditional path, meaning he was at Georgia. We all remember how that ended. First of all, he was at Georgia and didn't beat out Jake Fromm for the starting quarterback, even though, by the way, if you go back and read local media down there in Georgia, everybody was saying, why is Justin Fields not starting over Jake Fromm? I know he's got...
Yeah, by the way, the first time you said it very international. You were like Jake Fromm. I was like, what did he say?
He's got some Frenchness to him.
Churching the guy up already,
It was the French food that me and Tracy had last night.
Jake Fromm from the pocket. Very
charcuterie.
Outstanding instincts in the pocket. He's incredible, impeccable mind. He's just beyond reproach, this young man, de Fromm.
That's what made him so compelling. That's why he ended up playing more than Justin Fields.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe. But I mean, I remember reading some of those things like, why is this kid not getting more playing time? I know that Fromm is your guy and he feels like, he has more experience and he can lead you. And but he's always like battled something, no matter where he's been. And then he gets to Ohio State and it feels like, man, you got a fresh start. The path cleared out for you because Dwayne Haskins imprudently decided to leave school early and go to the NFL. And here you are to step right in. And his season last year, not this past season, two seasons ago,
2019.
It was just epic, man.
41 touchdowns, 3 picks.
Oh, it was stupid how good he was.
10 rushing touchdowns.
Yep, exactly right. He was dominant in every single way. They lost obviously a game and it ended up derailing their hopes for the championship. But he was still phenomenal in his first year in that system. And then last year, he was one of the guys who was pushing for the Big Ten to play football, right? He was like one of the spearheads behind the players saying, we want to play. I know that it's risky, it's dangerous, but you don't stop us from doing what we love.
Yeah.
And,
showed leadership.
Exactly. Yep. I don't think he gets enough credit for all the, trials that he's gone through and excelled every step of the way in his college career. All we want to do, for some reason, is point out, well, he doesn't really do this well. Actually, he does. He doesn't really do this well. Yeah, actually, he does. And now he has epilepsy. So, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Check that box. You know what? He's not on my list anymore. And it's nonsense. He doesn't deserve that kind of treatment.
He does not. I don't think any young prospect deserves that kind of treatment. I mean, if there's something on film, point it out.
That's right.
If there's a character flaw that's out there, whether it's the police blotter or then point it out. You're doing your job. But this innuendo, not that a medical condition's innuendo. I mean, and by the way, this came from, if you're just tuning in, this came from Justin being forthright with teams, which is smart. I don't want to say it's easily preventable because that could trivialize more serious cases of epilepsy. I don't have any familiarity with the disease in my family, thank God. But I've been reading about it all day, obviously. And I mentioned Alan Faneca, who's a Hall of Fame offensive lineman. He dealt with this his entire career.
Yep.
And he took medication, and it was able to not only subside, but basically eradicate might be too strong, and I don't want to overstep my bounds here again to minimize it for those who really are afflicted, and we have seen some bouts that are scary, quite frankly. So I'm not here to trivialize it at all, but he's been on the national radar for years. I mean, at different parts of the country, at the biggest football institutions in the world, and now this stuff is starting to hit the fan. It's starting to bother me.